Section 1. Why Bother with Being? An Introduction to a Philosophical Everest. Martin Heidegger's. The very title sends a shiver down the spine of many a university student, a book with a reputation for being as dense as a black hole and as welcoming as a tax audit. So why on earth would anyone willingly plunge into its depths? The answer, my dear reader, is quite simple. It asks the most fundamental question of all, a question we so often forget to ask in our mad rush through life. What does it actually to be? Not what things, but the very essence of their existence. It's a book that doesn't just want to give you answers, it wants to fundamentally change the way you see yourself and your place in the vast, bewildering cosmos. It's an intellectual Everest, to be sure, but the view from the top is rumored to be breathtaking. Before we strap on our crampons, let's get acquainted with our guide. Martin Heidegger, born in a quiet corner of Germany's Black Forest in 1889, was a rather curious figure. He looked more like a provincial woodsman than a titan of 20th century thought, often pictured in rustic attire. He studied under Edmund Husserl, the father of phenomenology, a philosophical school dedicated to studying conscious experience from the first-person perspective. Heidegger took this foundation and ran with it, but in a direction that was uniquely his own. His work is notoriously difficult, not simply because he was trying to be obtuse, but because he believed our everyday language was utterly inadequate for his project. He needed to invent a new vocabulary to pry open concepts that had been sealed shut for centuries. So, let's address the elephant in the room is ferociously difficult. Heidegger took German, a language already known for its delightful compound nouns, and twisted it into new and baffling shapes. He creates words like, that's being in the world, and, or being toward death. It's as if a chef decided the only way to make a new omelet was to first invent a new kind of chicken. This linguistic gymnastics, combined with the sheer abstractness of his ideas and a structure that can feel circular and repetitive, makes for a challenging expedition. But fear not. With the right map and a bit of patience, the path becomes clearer, and the strangeness of the language starts to reveal its profound purpose. The book's importance cannot be overstated. It caused a seismic shift in philosophy, influencing everything that came after it, from Jean-Paul Sartre's existentialism to Jacques Derrida's deconstruction. And its ripples are felt in fields as diverse as psychology, literary theory, theology, and even artificial intelligence. Reading it is like listening to the one recording that inspired all your favorite bands. It provides a new lens through which to examine our own lives, our anxieties, our relationships, and our inevitable finitude. It's a journey that promises not just intellectual stimulation, but a deeper, more authentic understanding of what it means to be you, here now on this peculiar day, July 25th, 2025. So, shall we begin? Section 2. The Essential Toolkit. Unpacking Heidegger's Peculiar Vocabulary. To navigate Heidegger's world, we need to learn his language. First up is the star of the show, a wonderfully German portmanteau. It literally translates to, being there. Heidegger uses this specific term instead of human or person because he wants to get away from the idea that we are just thinking things or biological organisms, is the kind of being for whom its own being is a question, a rock simply, but you and I, we worry about our existence, we are aware of it, we care about it, and we live it out in time. You are not a static object, you are a dynamic event, a being there in the midst of the world, constantly unfolding and becoming. It's a beautifully active way to think about ourselves. Next, we have the concept of, this isn't as simple as saying a cat is in a box. For Heidegger, our inness is not one of spatial containment, but of entanglement and engagement. We are not separate subjects observing an external world of objects. Instead, we are always already involved, caught up in a web of relationships, tools, and meanings. Think about your relationship with a hammer. You don't typically see it as a lump of wood and metal, you see it as forehammering. The world reveals itself to us through our projects and concerns. This seamless, practical engagement is our primary way of existing, and the detached, scientific view of the world comes only later, when things break down or we deliberately step back. This engaged existence is defined by what Heidegger calls, this isn't just about feeling worried, it's the fundamental structure of being. It's the fact that we are always projecting ourselves into future possibilities while also being shaped by our past. You are, at this very moment, a bundle of concerns about finishing this essay, about what to have for dinner, about your career, about your relationships. This forward-looking projection is tied to we are thrown into a world we didn't choose, a specific family, culture, language, and historical moment, with a set of circumstances that shape our possibilities. We find ourselves already in the middle of a story without having written the beginning. Finally, we arrive at the concepts that truly define our human condition, and the choice between authenticity and inauthenticity. For Heidegger, our death is not just a future event, it's the ultimate possibility that defines our entire existence. It is the one thing that is uniquely and absolutely our own. Facing this finitude, we have a choice. We can live, fleeing from our mortality by getting lost in the chattering crowd, the they-self, doing what one does and thinking what one thinks. Or we can choose by courageously confronting our own finitude. This confrontation doesn't lead to despair but to freedom, the freedom to choose our own possibilities and live a life that is truly our own, seizing the precious time we have. So, you have your conceptual toolkit. How do you actually go about reading this beast of a book? First and foremost, do not, I repeat, do not, go it alone on your first attempt. Think of it like assembling a particularly complicated piece of Swedish furniture. You absolutely need the instructions. Find a good secondary source or guide. Books like Hubert Dreyfus's or William Blattner's are invaluable companions. They act as expert Sherpas, pointing out the main trails, explaining the tricky terrain, and helping you avoid the most treacherous intellectual crevasses. Let them walk alongside you, and the journey will feel far less intimidating. The second rule of Heidegger Club is, slow down. This is not a book to be devoured in a weekend, it's a book to be sipped, savored, and digested over a long period. Read a few pages, then stop. Put the book down and go for a walk. Think about what you've just read. How does the idea of relate to how you just navigated the supermarket? Try to translate Heidegger's dense prose into your own words and experiences. This process of rumination is where the real understanding happens. Keep a dedicated notebook to serve as a glossary of his terms, jotting down his definitions and your own interpretations. This will become your personal map of his philosophical landscape. Another wonderfully useful technique is to engage in thought experiments. When Heidegger talks about equipment being ready to hand, think about a time a tool broke. Remember that moment when your pen ran out of ink, or your Wi-Fi suddenly died? Notice how the object suddenly became present at hand, no longer an invisible extension of your activity, but a stubborn, separate thing that you stare at. These moments are Heideggerian epiphanies. By actively looking for these experiences in your daily life, his abstract concepts suddenly click into place. They cease to be philosophical jargon and become descriptions of the lived world you inhabit every single day. This is philosophy at its most practical. Finally, find fellow climbers. Philosophy is, at its heart, a dialogue. Join a reading group, whether online or in person. The simple act of trying to explain a concept to someone else is one of the most powerful ways to solidify your own understanding. You'll find that others have struggled with the same passages that stumped you, and they may have found a way through that you hadn't considered. Hearing different perspectives and debating interpretations will enrich your reading immeasurably. It transforms a solitary struggle into a shared intellectual adventure, which is, I think we can all agree, a far more enjoyable way to scale any mountain. If you persist, you'll begin to see the book's grand structure was planned in two parts, though Heidegger famously only ever published the first. Division 1 focuses on a preparatory fundamental analysis of Dasein, which is where he lays out all the core concepts we've discussed: being in the world, care, thrownness, and the inauthentic they-self. Division 2 then deepens this analysis by introducing time as the ultimate horizon for understanding being. This is where he brings in being toward death and the call to authenticity, arguing that it's only by understanding our own temporality and finitude that we can grasp the meaning of our existence. The unpublished second part was meant to dismantle the history of philosophy, showing how thinkers from Plato onwards had forgotten the question of being. So why does this 70-year-old book still matter so profoundly today, on this fine day of July 25th, 2025? Because the problems it diagnoses have only become more acute. We live in an age of unprecedented distraction, of social media, they-selves, of constant digital chatter that pulls us away from ourselves. Heidegger's call to turn away from the inauthentic noise and confront our own possibilities is more urgent than ever. His critique of technology, not as a set of neutral tools but as a way of being that frames the world as a mere resource to be optimized, is remarkably prescient, offers a powerful antidote to the shallowness of modern life, inviting us to live more deliberately and meaningfully. Of course, the journey is not without its challenges. You will get lost, you will get frustrated, you will read a sentence 5 times and still feel as if you're trying to read porridge. This is normal. The key is not to aim for total mastery on the first, second, or even third reading. The goal is to let the questions seep in. Don't be afraid to skip a particularly dense section and come back to it later. Use online lectures, podcasts, and other resources. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy is your friend. The challenge is part of the process. It forces you to think more deeply than you otherwise would. Ultimately, reading is less about downloading information and more about undergoing a transformation. It is a journey of profound self-discovery. Be patient with the text, but more importantly, be patient with yourself. Embrace the confusion, be curious about the strange new words, and allow the book to work on you. It will change how you see your morning coffee, how you experience time, and how you relate to the people and the world around you. It is a demanding climb, yes, but the reward is a clearer, richer, and more authentic view of that most mysterious and wonderful thing of all, your own being.